Lovely to see you all. Thank you for coming, and thanks for being interested in this topic enough to take the effort to get together. So I would not go too much into any actual subject matter right now. I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of what will be coming in terms of the topics and to what depth I'm hoping to cover them, so that you have an idea of what to expect when you come here. And more importantly, the one thing that I'd really want to encourage all of you is to keep a pen and paper handy, just not only for the notes that you make for yourself if you want to make them, but more importantly, any questions that come up during the course of the talk or during the course of the conference, if you make a note of it and maybe share it with organizers, either with Michael or Tanya or even with me, I'll try to take those into account before the next talk or the next subject. So the reason this is so important is the topic of tech, because it's kind of washing over us every day. It's also important for us to be internally always active. So it's not sufficient to simply absorb and absorb and absorb and absorb some more. You have to think, okay, all this is good, how do I apply it? All this is good, what do I think? All this is good, what about that? Or whatever it is. So I want you to be completely free in terms of your questions, and the more specific and technical they are, the better. And that will give me also opportunity to tackle some of the subjects which is of interest to you, and for all you know, might be of interest to other people also. So now, as far as the subject itself is concerned, the first talk that's going to be following shortly soon after this one is going to be about the history or the past of technology. So in that, I'll mostly be going through the evolutionary streams in technology, because the reason for this particular topic is we normally look at it from today's perspective in terms of, oh, I have a car, I have my phone, I have this TV, high definition LCD TV, and so we have all these things already facing us, and a lot of times we don't really know where they come from and what has gone behind them in order to make them, and how what we are seeing today is a kind of crystallized version of several streams that have begun 200, 300 or even more number of years ago. So to orient ourselves with respect to the subject in time is extremely important. So that was going to be the kind of first proper lecture of this conference. And then after trying to take care of the past and getting a clearer view of it, then on the next day we come to the present. And that will be the two talks which will take place tomorrow. In this case, since the present environment is filled with computers, it will mostly be concentrating on identifying what is the real heart of a computer. What is the real heart of any computing technology? And what is the relationship between the computer and the human mind? And what is the relationship between the effects of the computer on the world and the effects of the computer on a person and the effect of the person on the computer? All these different interactions that we have between us and the world and the machines that we make have to be clarified with respect to computing. So that will be the focus of that full day. In the morning, it will be getting a little bit into the nitty-gritties of the logic that is required to understand these things. In the afternoon lecture, it will be more about all of technology in general. After knowing what we know about computing, how do we kind of grasp every single piece of technology that we come across? How do we think about it? How do we handle it? And where else can that lead? So once you look at where else can that lead, that question goes forward into the future. So, on the third day of the conference, it will mostly be an emphasis on the future trends that technology can take based on how it is going already. So, this would be more of a kind of defaults that are already existent in the world. For example, if you look at Silicon Valley today, and just visited Silicon Valley a couple of weeks back, you can make out the kind of pulse of what people want to bring into the technological world, and you can get a feeling for where they want to go. And as far as our participation is concerned, it is good to know what the already existing kind of goals are. And it's this particular theme is, I think, even more important because Ben Aharon, with whom Rose had actually wanted earlier to bring to this conference, spoke and wrote and described that particular theme extensively. What are the goals that are already existing in today's world with regard to technology? And this, which can be in terms of CEO decisions or hacker decisions or just tech enthusiast decisions, all culminates in a certain direction that we all end up going in as a default. The goal of this would be to understand that default. And it is extremely important to understand this default because that's the only way you can come up with ideas to change it. And so this will be the topics on the final day. On the final day, when we are looking at the in-reach and the outreach, we are hoping that all of this knowledge and kind of worldview and everything that you have taken part in does not remain merely in thought, or it does not kind of stagnate in some corner of the mind, but actually finds a way of applying individually and, more importantly, as a group. Because I think one of the main motivations for Seed Australia is not just to work individually with these kind of subjects, but to see what can be done as a community in order to take something like this forward. What do we need to prepare? What do we need to do? Whom do we contact? What is the actual on the ground action that has a chance of success in such a scenario? And going through all of these different topics over the next weekend and 3 days, what I'd like to emphasize is that whenever there is a feeling of being a little overwhelmed or a little afraid, or the feeling of, oh, this is much beyond me, I don't get this, this is not for me, I'm not a tech person, I'm not a physics person, I'm not a math person, and so on and so forth. When these kind of feelings come up from inside, I would ask you to courageously tackle them and assert to yourself, maybe I'm not a tech person, but I can still get it. This is extremely important because what we have done over the course of our last century's culture is unknowingly we have taken some of the results of technology into our own minds, and one of those results is categorizing. It's very easy to categorize because everybody does it. That's how a phone works, because somebody categorized really well. And this categorization is the tendency that we have to battle constantly in our own minds, because unless this tendency is tackled or acknowledged or brought up from under the surface, it will constantly keep pricking you and never really allow you to think of ways to actually take an action. And in this particular mode of working, you want it to be more than a conversation, more than a discussion, and an actual activity that you can apply in the world. And it's with this in mind also that 2 of the afternoon workshops have been set up. The first one today will be about clocks. So we're going to be taking apart a clock, or taking part in taking apart a clock, and then trying to put it back together again, so which is the trickier part. And then the second day, which is tomorrow, we'll have a bit of a workshop where you're trying to actually design part of a computer using dominoes. So the purpose of that is to kind of get you to see how these things are not so out there as one might imagine, but they are actually things that we can all grasp with a good, healthy common sense. And once you grasp it with that sense, you can start seeing things which a lot of programmers who are focused only on one tiny portion of their job will not be able to see. And this is what is really needed in order for any alternative direction to come out in technology. So that is going to be the last day, the main focus of the last day. And I hope that from all of this, there will be people who will find the courage within themselves to take this forward more into the world, like some of the folks over here have already done and brought us together. And I hope if with the questions and the discussions, and more importantly the activities, we are actually able to make something good of this and make an impact in the world. So that's my outline. So thank you guys.